Welcome to the Firefly Tutors TV podcast, where real teachers from all over the country discuss real solutions for parents and educators alike. Here's your host, Marissa Johnston.
Hello and welcome to The Buzz, brought to you by Firefly Tutors TV, where we talk to educators and parents all across the country on current topics affecting school children today. Welcome to the podcast, Kristyn Strauss of Bellevue, Washington, and I am your host, Marissa Johnston of Phoenix, Arizona. Our guest today brings a wealth of teaching and leadership experience. During her previous years teaching in the elementary level, Kristyn was recognized as Teacher of the Year. She is dedicated to helping families and teachers create learning environments where all students succeed and discover their true potential. Kristyn, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
We have all seen where students can struggle from time to time in their academics. In your personal experience, what have you found to be the top signs a child needs help with their schooling?
It's slightly difficult to only choose one of these top signs because I truly believe that all signs will really start to eventually unfold. But I think the hardest thing to hear or see from your child is your child not loving school. So maybe avoiding and even getting to the point where they don't want to attend school. And they may easily get agitated when starting an assignment, or a parent might start to hear some negative self-talk, such as, I'm not good enough, I can't read like so-and-so, I don't know how to do that. So these are definitely signs that I encourage families and educators to really take seriously.
What are some signs that parents should be watching for at home?
I think the sign we often think of first is the most obvious. So when students receive a below average progress report or report card, maybe there's been some communication from the teacher that the student is struggling in a particular subject. So I believe most students will show other signs as well, such as feeling reluctant towards school, losing interest in learning, and they can quickly begin to compare their performance with their peers, as mentioned before. But one thing that I would also like to add that I think is really important here is if your student or child is around the age of 5 or 6 years old or younger, just make sure that you get a thorough vision and hearing test from your pediatrician, even if they've had a quick screening at daycare or school before or somewhere else. So this will really ensure that any area of concern is detected early, as either one of those can directly impact learning.
Yes, I recall, during my time as a teacher, a lot of times it wasn't any kind of other struggle other than they're struggling to see the board, or they can't fully pick up on what the teacher's saying. I was one of those teachers that walked around the room all the time, so the kids who were struggling to hear couldn't always follow my lips. So that's where we would really see a lot of struggle as well.
Yep, I agree.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so what are some options for students who are struggling with their academics?
Well, the best thing to do is work with their teacher and build a partnership with them in supporting the student. So from there, families can have a plan of action at home, and there should be certain things the teacher will incorporate in the classroom as well. So aside from just the academic support, it's also really important to listen and affirm the student's feelings. Sometimes sharing a story, how maybe you struggled as well. Maybe it was reading as a child, or Marissa, just as you said, maybe not being able to see the board, which was my personal experience as well. And then just continue to love on them and encourage them, and just slowly guide them through these next steps. So sometimes students might also need outside support, which is fantastic. There are so many strong resources and tools that we have access to right at our fingertips. So a tutor is a really great option. They can work directly with that student, completely one-on-one, and really tailor the learning to their specific needs, which, as we've discussed in a previous podcast, sometimes that isn't always achievable in a larger classroom setting of anywhere from 22 to 26 students. It can be really challenging for educators to make sure that they are differentiating learning and really providing those one-on-one opportunities with students. Oftentimes it's in a small group if we even get to that.
Yes, and a tutor I know can also help just build that child's confidence up, because it's almost like having their own personal mentor right there to just guide them and assist them as they need. Excellent point, Kristyn. Thank you so much. So, struggling in school can also mean struggling to stay interested.
Mm-hmm.
How might these signs of struggle look different in a child who is not being challenged enough in his or her academics?
So this is a really good question because the signs are very similar. So back to the most obvious sign, if a student is uninterested and falling behind academically versus a student who is uninterested but performing well, then to me, that is the main difference. So you might hear more terms such as I'm bored, or I don't want to do this. I already know this. Why do I have to do this or complete this assignment? And in my opinion, that's really where differentiating instruction, again, is just so crucial. And being in tune to your students' preferred learning styles can ultimately help them succeed and reach their highest potential.
I love that you bring up differentiating instruction, and it made me think of the homeschooling parents out there,
Yep.
because a lot of them are probably just working one-on-one with their child. But in your opinion, do you think students also need the different subjects differentiated for them? Even if it's the same child, could they learn reading a whole lot differently than they learn math?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, given each subject and based on the way that, I guess, really how you can go about creating a lesson within that subject. So to me, science, for example, you can make it so interactive and hands-on where it doesn't have to be, just that paper, pencil, written work or task. And so I think each subject really has a lot of leverage in activating students' different learning styles, which is really, really neat to see how they can shine in each area and just grow as an individual, even at a young age. So back to, different philosophies as well, where it's a little more student-centered and student-led, and allowing those students or child to have that opportunity to really take ownership of their learning and kind of guide where they want to go. Of course, you're there right alongside them, scaffolding and supporting them along the way. But I think it could be very, very fun and eye-opening to see where your student takes their learning as well.
I love that you brought up science. Science was one of those areas that if you handed me a textbook, I wasn't going to do it. I was bored already, But then making it hands-on, that's when I was all about science, So I absolutely think you're right. Otherwise, for reading, you could absolutely hand me a book, say, read this, and I was going to do that. But for science, I was not. So I totally see that. I've seen that in my students. I'm sure you've seen it in your students too. It's not just necessarily an ability or lack of, it's, you have to tailor it to their interests too. And I know that a tutor can really support in those areas as well.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you, Kristyn. Okay, so moving right along, oftentimes adults share that their educators would give them more assignments to complete when they were ahead in school, which I think a lot of times led to some burnout there. It's almost like being that person that you're good at what you do, so let me give you more work.
Yes.
And that can seem so unfair to a child, especially. What are some alternative ways that educators can increase rigor for learners?
I have also heard that. To me, it's not a strategy that I would personally use in the classroom, but I do believe that educators, ultimately are trying to, just do their best in supporting that student when that happens. But I think the bigger gap here is teacher training. There isn't enough professional development opportunities for educators to really think about the depth of learning. So we are most familiar with the breadth of learning, which refers to, that full span of knowledge in a subject. But really being able to go more into learning refers to the extent to which specific topics are really focused on and amplified and explored. So how can a student go deeper in their learning and understanding? Are their learning outcomes with low rigor, meaning they are just simply defining something, describing something, listening and explaining? Or is it with high rigor, like you said, where the student is given that opportunity to analyze, design, evaluate, and create? Or maybe they can even support another peer in their classroom. It's easy to see that student that they are, quote unquote, on target and give them that check mark, maybe because of, again, classroom sizes. They aren't getting as much one-on-one time because they aren't below grade level. But that's where I wish educators had more support to confidently increase rigor in any assignment and any subject.
I agree. Those are very valid points. So for our educators who may be new, who may be seeking new ideas, and I know a lot of our educators are from the various walks of life. We have tutors, we have homeschool parents, we have charter school teachers, public school educators, everything. What might that look like to provide more rigor, to challenge a child to do more with applying it to their everyday life? What are some examples that you have of just really adding more meaning to what the child is learning?
I think that one good example, and almost kind of a buzzword, is project-based learning. So where they're actively engaging in real world and personally meaningful projects. So to me, if a student has already understood a topic or assignment, but going deeper into that and being able to apply their knowledge to, again, real world situations and examples, I think that's more meaningful and valuable than them getting, more work. Or maybe they're in kindergarten and we think, oh, well, let's just give them some first grade problems. That's really that difference in being, in the depth of learning and where they're already just understanding the content and knowledge. So allowing them opportunities to just go a little bit deeper into the content areas and giving them some of that ownership in their learning to really just create and design something that's meaningful to them.
And Kristyn, I'm going to dig a little deep here because I personally know how much of a proponent you are for project-based learning. How do you feel about project-based learning and it providing more of a challenge for some of our higher level thinkers out there for our students?
How do I feel about it as just an opportunity to offer to them, or?
I suppose more, how do you feel it provides a depth of knowledge for the students? Differently than, I suppose, a lecture or a whole group lesson with, paper and pencil.
Yep, exactly. So trying to think of an example, and for some reason I just keep circling back to science related content.
Sure.
But I'm thinking of, just the environment, for example, and having that simple question with your students of, how can we take care of our environment, or how do we take care of our homes and our schools and our communities, and what that can really branch out to. Of course, it's easy to go on to Teachers Pay Teachers or some website and download a printable activity, is what I mean, kind of at that baseline level. And maybe at that time, they're just matching different pictures to a vocabulary word, but really being able to apply what that word means. And again, I'm going back to this example, so I want this to make sense. So maybe we're having conversation about, it's good to pick up trash outside. That's one way that we can take care of our environment and our surroundings. But being able to make that meaningful to them might mean that on the second day of that lesson, we're actually, outside and walking around our school building if we have that opportunity and flexibility, to kind of, go maybe pick up some trash and collect it over time. And then maybe on the third day, we are doing a shared writing where we're writing to our governor or whoever has some of those bigger decision-making abilities, and we're actively working together and as a team, which is also building, the classroom culture and rapport amongst one another. But not only that, they feel involved and they feel like they can make a difference. They're feeling heard in what they're doing. And that's really starting to resonate with them, rather than, again, back to that simple, very basic way of expressing something that I learned. So that's why I pull in the professional development as well. It's not to say that teachers don't know this knowledge. Some, I don't think, have enough opportunity to continue to grow and learn and really think about, what does this look like in my classroom, and how can I implement this model in a day? How can I create my schedule where it's not just a time block of time for each subject, but I'm intertwining the subjects and bringing writing and reading into science and math. So, just those cross-curricular connections, but ultimately back to that meaningful, engaging learning and project-based learning. It might take a little more time to plan, but I actually found it a lot easier to almost look at the month as a whole and take some of those big topics, plug in the important, whether it's the standards or whatever the goals are that you're trying to achieve, and then working as a team to really differentiate each one of those tasks. So if that was our task to write this letter, what roles is each student, going to have in creating this, and how can they just feel involved?
Yes. Oh, this has been a fantastic discussion. I hope that we've been able to support a lot of people who are trying to find resolutions to, their children's struggles, because it's never fun to witness that, but I think we have a lot of good input and tips here for parents, for educators, for tutors who are working with a child who might be struggling. Thank you so much for being here today, Kristyn. If you enjoyed our discussion today, please like Firefly Tutors on all your social media hubs like Facebook and Instagram. Find us on Pinterest, where we pin all of our favorite resources for parents and tutors. At Firefly Tutors, we believe every student deserves the opportunity to develop to their highest potential. See you next time.